banks and stealing payrolls at gunpoint to raise money to overthrow the Tsar. In 1910, Joseph chose a new name, Stalin, which in Russian means man of steel. During this period, Stalin was arrested 8 times by Tsarist police and each time deported to remote rural areas in Siberia.
He was always a loner, a very bitter and unpleasant person. You find this in memoirs of other revolutionaries who shared exile with him, that he never took part in their social activities. He was always apart and bitter and nasty.
Stalin soon caught Lenin's eye as an effective and ruthless revolutionary. He didn't play a major role in the Bolshevik Revolution of October 1917, but he was ambitious and determined to rise to the top of the Communist Party. Stalin had defined himself as a revolutionary and knew exactly what he wanted in life. Hitler, on the other hand, was still searching, and in 1907 moved to Vienna to pursue his artistic interests. He rented a tiny room here at 29 Stumpergasse. Living on a small inheritance controlled by his mother, he dreamed of entering the Academy of Fine Arts. But his dream was shattered when his mother, Clara, died 4 days before Christmas after a long and painful struggle with breast cancer.
Because of the extreme closeness between Hitler and his mother, he became non-functional. He was devastated by her death.
To support himself after his mother's death, Adolf sold his paintings on the street. It's interesting that he only painted landscapes, never people. Two years in a row, Hitler applied to the prestigious Academy of Fine Arts, but was unsuccessful. Because he was unable to draw people, the Academy told him he had no aptitude for painting. He believed he'd been rejected because several members of the admissions committee were Jewish. Vienna was his first exposure to Jews from Eastern Europe. Hitler became attracted to the racist rhetoric in anti-Semitic newspapers and pamphlets. It was during this period that he became intrigued by the idea of a pure German master race. After his rejection by the Academy and the death of his mother, Hitler was miserable in Vienna, lonely and poor, lacking direction. Finally, in 1914, with the outbreak of war, Hitler enlisted in the army and found his identity in battle, carnage, and death. For the first time in his life, Hitler was happy. He felt at home, felt that he belonged.
In his army service, Hitler was the happiest he was at any time in his life. The sanctioned killing that he was entitled to engage in as a soldier gave an outlet for the first time to the murderous rage that had grown in him from treatment by his father.
Hitler served as a courier and experienced his first real success in life when he was awarded the Iron Cross, first class, rare for a corporal.
Hitler's experience in World War I, the fact that he survived 50 battles in which his own regiment was wiped out over and over, replenished and wiped out again and again, confirmed his belief that he was chosen by destiny for a magnificent role in history.
When Germany signed the armistice on November the 11th, 1918, Hitler was enraged. He pledged to avenge those who had betrayed the fatherland, in his view, the communists and the Jews. The pivotal year for Stalin was 1924. Fate intervened and provided an opportunity to seize power. That year, Lenin had suffered a series of strokes. Knowing his death was imminent, Lenin warned the party to beware of Stalin.
Lenin saw that something was wrong with this man. He saw that he was a problematic personality and that he was a dangerous person to achieve high office, and especially the very high top office that he, Lenin, had held as the recognized supreme leader of the Bolshevik Party and therefore of the Soviet state.
But it was too late. Lenin died in May, and Stalin immediately began jockeying for power. Driven by ambition, he outmaneuvered and intimidated potential rivals, using ruthless agents to do his dirty work.
The system of agents around him who were constantly eliminating any potential political opponents was itself paranoid. The core, the center of the paranoia was Stalin himself, but he managed to recruit people who thought like him, people who saw enemies everywhere.
Stalin once said, "To choose one's enemy, to prepare every detail of the blow, to slake an implacable vengeance and then go to bed, there is nothing sweeter in the world."
The symptoms of paranoia appeared relatively early, not only during his dictatorship, but even before. The famous neurologist Vladimir Bekhterev actually examined Stalin in 1927 and diagnosed him as paranoid. A few hours later, Bekhterev died in mysterious circumstances. I should emphasize that this was not amateur psychohistory. This was a professional diagnosis.
Before long, Stalin's paranoia and ruthlessness were to have profound consequences, not only for the peoples of the Soviet Union, but those closest to him too. The same cruelty and sadism that marked Stalin's political life dominated his family life, especially his relations with his second wife, Nadia.
His relation to this particular woman was terrible. He abused her, both psychologically and physically.
Nadia was much younger, 17 when he was 40. She bore him 2 children, a son, Vasily, and a daughter, Svetlana. Stalin had another son, Yakov, from his first wife, a strong peasant girl from Georgia. She had died of typhoid in 1907. Like his own father, Stalin humiliated and insulted his sons. Vasily became an alcoholic, and Yakov tried to commit suicide.
His abuse as a child was transmitted in the form of his abuse to his own children.
Nadia was a good mother, both to her own children and to her stepson, Yakov.
She was a member of an old Bolshevik family in Leningrad, and for him, he was one of the leaders of the revolution. And she looked up to him and had great belief in him.
But Stalin was notoriously cruel to Nadia, insulting her in front of other people.
Little by little, she became aware of his personal defects, his defects of character, which were shown in many ways at home.
On November the 8th, 1932, Nadia and Stalin had a violent argument at a party in Moscow. He became furious and half-drunk, threw cigarette ends in her face. She got up and left, returning to their Kremlin apartment. The next morning, Nadia was found dead, shot in the heart.
He either drove her to suicide or killed her himself. Historians have not been able to agree on exactly what happened, but hers was not a natural death.
According to Svetlana, her mother, Nadia, left Stalin a letter which was full of personal and political reproaches, and that he went into a rage as a result of this letter. And when the funeral came about, he walked up to her coffin and then pushed it away. He never went to her grave at the Novodevichy Cemetery.